Hey guys, this is the new 100% soft fluorocarbon from Hagane Gear. Normally fluorocarbon can be quite stiff. So what we have done is that we worked really hard to get the softest possible fluorocarbon so that the presentation of the lure in the clear water is as perfect as possible. And what you will find with the new Hagane Gear soft fluorocarbon is that it's really, really soft. So you can see even a 0.60 here will actually fall down like that, like a 90-degree fall over the side of your hand here. So the soft fluorocarbon is very invisible in the water. It just basically disappears. Has a very high knot strength, and it's very easy to tie to your braided leaders and very effective when you use it for predator fishing in gin clear water. Let me show you a few tips on how to use your fluorocarbon. So guys, the first thing I'm going to show you is how to tie your fluorocarbon leader to your main braided line. In this case, it's the HD4 Adrenaline V2. I have it on my custom Predator spinning rod here, set up for medium to heavy pike fishing. So this casting weight here is up to 110 grams. So I'm going to use a relatively strong braid, and I'm going to tie that to a relatively fine soft fluorocarbon. This is for finesse presentation. So let me show you how easy it is to tie the fluorocarbon to the braid. Pull out first approximately the piece I want to use, lay the spool down. I take my braid and I double it up at about 30 centimeters or so, like that. Then I make a double grinner knot, like so. So I parallel the fluorocarbon trace with my doubled up main line, and I make a loop first on the braid here, and I make a 5-turn grinner. And 5. And that gives me a little loop in the end here that I can then open and pull tight. So that's step number 1. Then I turn the whole thing around, and then I do exactly the same with the fluorocarbon. So I make a loop like so, and I turn that 5 times through the loop, and I then make what you call a grinner to grinner. So actually it's 2 knots that slides up towards each other. When I'm this far here, I tighten down that loop like so, and then I can pull these 2 tight. Make sure that you hold on to both ends of the braid here that you have doubled. Once they get a little closer, just moisten them down a little bit, and you can pull these 2 knots firmly towards each other. And with one long, strong pull, you can feel that that is a very, very tight connection. So that's how simple you tie a very strong knot from your braided main line to your fluorocarbon trace. Now, I can trim this down all the way if that's what I want to. What I need is either a sharp braid cutter, or the new multi-rigging tool here from Hagane Gear has a very good tungsten jaw that I can get very close and actually cut down the excess loop all the way into the end of the knot. Now, there's 2 things you can do here. I can either trim down the fluorocarbon all the way to get the small fine knot, or I can leave a little weed guard. Let's say we're fishing in a brackish area or in a lake where you have a lot of drifting grass. You don't want that drifting grass to be caught on your lure. So I take about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters, and I kind of let it sit there. So that actually catches the grass and the braid so it doesn't end up on your lure. Then I can trim down the last little remaining part here of the mainline braid, and I'm basically done. So that is a nice little weed guard. If I'm just fishing in an area where I don't need the weed guard, I can cut down the fluorocarbon all the way down, and I have a perfect little knot here where the mainline braid is doubled. It's a grinner to grinner, basically one of the strongest connections you can get between a braid and a mono trace. Once you've tied your mainline braid to your fluorocarbon trace, I'm going to show you 2 simple knots on how to attach either your snap or your swivel to your fluorocarbon or monofilament. When you fish with a relatively thick trace, you don't need to make a very complicated and big knot. I recommend a 4-turn blood knot. So you basically just pass the line through the loop and you turn 4 to 5 times. The thicker the line is, the less turns. So in this case, I'm going to do 5 turns. I pass that through the little loop here, and then I pass it through the big loop one more time. Notice how I tighten down the line and hold that little excess line here, and I then can tighten it down. But before I tighten it down, just moisten it down so you don't burn the line, and you can pull this very, very tight. So what I like about that is that you create a very small knot that's very, very strong, and it doesn't leave any burn marks on the monofilament. And then I can trim that all the way down, and I basically have the perfect connection to my snap or swivel. So when you fish with thinner lines, I have a little tip for you. This knot here is not going to make it for the very thin fluorocarbon traces. So let's say you're finesse fishing with a 0.17 or 0.22 millimeter fluorocarbon. Here's my advice. You double up the line. So just double up the trace and you make a very simple knot. So by doubling up the trace, you actually divide the pressure on 2 lines. So what I do, I just make a very simple 4-turn knot, but doubled. And I just pass it through the loop and nothing else. And I tighten that down. And again, before you tighten it all the way down, just moisten it and you can pull it totally tight. So this knot here is very, very effective when you use the thinner diameter fluorocarbons or monofilaments. So you actually divide that burn pressure and pull pressure on 2 lines inside the knot. And again, this one you can actually trim down all the way as well. So 2 simple knots and 2 very effective ways to tie your swivel or your snap to your monofilament or fluorocarbon trace.